You pick it up without a thought. Stab a piece of pasta, spear a vegetable, twirl some salad. It's just the fork. Ordinary, essential. But imagine the gasps, the cries of sacrilege, the whispers of damnation that once followed its every use. Picture Venice, 1004 AD. A Byzantine Princess Maria Argyropoulina dines with a gleaming, two-pronged golden rod. Locals are horrified. Within days, she's dead from the plague. Divine punishment, they cry, for her vanity and refusal to use God-given fingers. This seemingly simple utensil wasn't just novel, it was scandalous, unholy, even deadly. This is the story of how an instrument of pagan rituals and aristocratic decadence fought its way onto your dinner table. Close your eyes and step back 1,000 years before forks graced European tables. Imagine the feast. Roasted meats glistening with fat, steaming stews thick with vegetables, sticky sauces clinging to everything. How do you eat? With your hands, specifically your first 3 fingers. The eating fingers, knives, are present, mostly large, personal weapons used for spearing meat from communal platters, and cutting it on thick slices of stale bread called trenchers, which later doubled as plates, often shared between 2 people. Spoons exist primarily for soups and porridges. It's a messy, greasy, socially fraught affair. Delicate foods like berries or soft cheese are tricky. Sharing a trencher meant navigating your neighbor's greasy fingers, reaching for the same joint of meat. Hygiene, rudimentary at best. Hands were washed before and after meals, but the act itself was inherently tactile and shared. The shared trencher was a literal common ground, but also a potential vector for, well, everything. Beyond the mess, there were deep cultural taboos. Fingers were God's tools, the natural, humble instruments for receiving sustenance. Using anything artificial was seen by many as an insult to divine providence, a sign of arrogance and effeminacy. Reaching into a shared pot with a personal implement that could be seen as distrustful, implying your companions were unclean. The very act of eating was visceral, communal, and governed by strict, unwritten codes about how and what you touched. Elegance was found in restraint and skill with the fingers and knife, not in elaborate tools. Life without the fork wasn't just inconvenient. It was a world where the intimacy of shared food battled constantly with the practicalities of grease, heat, and deeply held beliefs about piety and propriety. Humanity needed a solution for the mess, the burns, the awkwardness of delicate foods. But the solution faced a wall of tradition and theology. The fork's true genesis isn't in a European workshop, but centuries earlier, far from the shocked gaze of Venetian priests, we need to travel back to the sophisticated, sprawling Byzantine Empire, Constantinople in the 4th or 5th century AD. Here, archaeologists find the earliest evidence. Small, often ornate forks, likely crafted from precious metals like bronze or silver. But here's the shocking twist. They weren't primarily for eating food as we know it. These early forks were ritual objects. So what was their first documented purpose? It was serving or handling sacred offerings, particularly during pagan ceremonies. Imagine priests carefully lifting consecrated meats or delicate fruits from altars using these tools, ensuring ritual purity by avoiding direct hand contact with the divine offerings. Later, within the Byzantine court, they evolved into symbols of extreme refinement and status. Emperors and nobles used them for eating sticky fruits like dates or figs, or perhaps delicate sweets like baklava, preserving their meticulously clean hands and elaborate robes. It was a tool of the hyper-elite, a visible marker separating the imperial court from the common, finger-eating masses. The invention moment for Europe, however, is tragically vivid. Princess Maria Argyropoulina's arrival in Venice around 1004 AD to marry the Doge's son. She brought her Byzantine customs, including her golden fork, at her wedding feast. The sight of this beautiful woman delicately conveying food to her mouth with a glittering instrument instead of her fingers caused outrage. The local clergy, led by the formidable Saint Peter Damian, thundered against this diabolical luxury. He condemned the fork as an affront to God, who provided humans with natural fingers. When Maria succumbed to the plague shortly after, it was seen as divine retribution, proof positive of the fork's inherent sinfulness. Her personal dining tool became a symbol of vanity punished. This wasn't just resistance. It was a near-death experience for the fork in the West. The scandal was so potent, the association with death and decadence so strong, that the fork vanished from European tables for centuries. The breakthrough wasn't technological, it was cultural, and it failed spectacularly on its first major outing. The fork's European journey began not with a bang, but with a plague-induced whimper and the echo of a priest's condemnation. So the fork lay dormant in Western Europe, a cursed object, but not entirely forgotten. Like a slow-burning ember, the idea persisted, particularly in Italy, which maintained closer ties to the Byzantine East. By the late 14th and early 15th centuries, whispers of the fork began to resurface, not in religious horror stories, but in the inventories of the ultra-wealthy. Italian nobility, always keen on displays of sophistication and hygiene, started cautiously readopting it. Inventories from Venice and Florence list forks, often just one or two per household. Treasures locked away, made of crystal, ivory, or precious metals, elaborately carved, they were status symbols, conversation pieces, used primarily for sticky or sugary foods that soiled the fingers. The real turning point, the moment the fork began its slow conquest, arrived with another royal marriage, Catherine de' Medici's arrival in France. In 1533, to marry the future King Henry II, Catherine brought not just chefs, but the entire refined culture of the Florentine Renaissance court, including the use of forks. The French court, initially skeptical, gradually succumbed to the practicality and elegance of the Italian way. What happened next changed everything. The fork became entangled with the burgeoning culture of elaborate codes of manners and refined behavior sweeping European aristocracy. Using a fork signaled control, cleanliness, and superior breeding. It separated the elite from the barbaric masses who ate with their hands. But the fork itself was evolving. Early models were often straight, like small pitchforks, with two sharp, pointed tines. Good for spearing, less so for scooping. Over the 17th and 18th centuries, key innovations emerged. Tines began to curve slightly upwards. Crucially, a third tine was added around the early 18th century in Germany and England, making it far more effective for scooping peas or holding food steady while cutting. By the late 18th century, the four-tined fork began to appear, offering even greater stability. Materials shifted as well. While silver remained popular for the wealthy, the Industrial Revolution brought cheaper materials like pewter, then nickel, silver, and eventually stainless steel in the 20th century, making forks accessible to the middle and working classes. The spread was slow and uneven. England was particularly resistant well into the 1600s, but by the 18th century, The fork was firmly established in aristocratic dining across Europe, steadily trickling down through society. Its journey from cursed Byzantine relic to essential European tableware was complete, driven by status, hygiene, and the relentless pursuit of refined manners. The fork's victory seemed simple. Cleaner hands, more elegant dining, but its ripple effects were profound and often unexpected, reshaping society from the dining table outward. The most immediate consequence was the revolution in table manners and etiquette. Suddenly, a whole new rulebook was needed. Which hand holds the fork? Continental versus American-style debates rage on. How to spear without stabbing, how to scoop gracefully, when to use it versus the spoon or knife. Elaborate codes emerged, documented in popular etiquette manuals. Using the fork incorrectly wasn't just messy, it was socially disastrous, a sign of poor breeding. This obsession with proper utensil use created new forms of social stratification. Mastering the fork became a marker of class. Napoleon Bonaparte even reportedly decreed that fork tines should point down to prevent diners from using them like weapons. A literal disarmament at the table. Then came the utensil explosion. The fork wasn't satisfied alone. Its acceptance paved the way for a proliferation of specialized tools. If a fork was good, wouldn't a fish fork be better? Or an oyster fork? A salad fork? A dessert fork? The 18th and 19th centuries saw an arms race of cutlery, each new piece reflecting greater refinement and complexity. In dining, silverware sets became vast, confusing displays of status. The simple act of setting a table became a minefield of social nuance dictated by the fork and its ever-growing family. Paradoxically, the fork also contributed to declining dental health. As refined table manners took hold, so did softer, more processed foods that were easier to eat politely with utensils. Think custards, finely minced meats. This shift away from chewing tougher, whole foods, like gnawing meat straight off the bone, is believed by some anthropologists to have contributed to weaker jaws and increased dental problems over generations. The fork enabled a culinary shift that, while elegant, might have softened us up. Literally. Furthermore, the fork fundamentally altered food preparation and presentation. Chefs no longer needed to design dishes easily handled by fingers. They could create intricate presentations, delicate compositions, and sauces with finer textures, knowing the fork could handle them. The very aesthetics of cuisine evolved around the capabilities of this new tool. The fork didn't just change how we ate, it changed what we ate, and how it looked on the plate. Its influence extended far beyond the diner's hand, reshaping kitchens and culinary arts across the globe. This small instrument triggered a cascade of social, biological, and culinary transformations nobody in 11th century Venice could have possibly foreseen. Today, the fork is utterly mundane. Billions are produced annually in stainless steel, plastic, bamboo. It's a universal symbol for dining, found in every kitchen drawer, restaurant, and picnic basket. The scandal, the religious condemnation, the association with death and decadence. All forgotten, it won. It conquered the global table, but its legacy is profound. Look around any restaurant, the complex ballet of cutlery, the fish fork, the salad fork, the dessert fork, is a direct descendant of that 18th century utensil explosion the original fork triggered. Our obsession with individual place settings, avoiding shared plates, mostly, and intricate table manners, rooted in the social revolution the fork ignited, The very concept of fine dining relies heavily on the precision and etiquette that forks made not just possible, but necessary. The fork's journey teaches us a powerful lesson about innovation. It wasn't the first solution. Spoons, knives, fingers were there. It wasn't even the best solution for every culture. Chopsticks reigned supreme in East Asia. Its success was messy, fraught with cultural resistance, religious backlash, and near extinction. It succeeded not solely because it was useful, though it was, but because it became entangled with powerful forces. Status symbols, Medici influence, hygiene trends, growing awareness, though imperfect, and the human desire for refinement and social distinction. It shows how practicality alone isn't enough. Innovation needs cultural acceptance, often driven by influential adopters and changing social values. Its story also highlights the law of unintended consequences. A tool designed for personal cleanliness and avoiding sticky fingers ended up revolutionizing social codes, spawning an industry of specialized utensils, altering human biology indirectly, and transforming culinary arts. The simplest inventions can trigger the most complex chains of change. The fork reminds us that the objects we use every day are rarely simple. They are artifacts of history, carrying hidden stories of scandal, adaptation, and the relentless, often surprising, march of human ingenuity. The fork's story teaches us that true innovation often faces fierce resistance, dismissed as unnecessary, arrogant, or even sacrilegious. It shows how small ideas, championed persistently, can reshape our world in ways we never predict. Next time you pick up your fork, remember its shocking journey. From pagan altar to plague scandal to royal tables, think of the centuries of resistance it overcame. What everyday object in your life might have a hidden history just as surprising? What modern innovation do you think faces similar resistance today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you were fascinated by the hidden drama behind the fork, give this video a thumbs up. It tells the algorithm you want more deep dives into the surprising origins of ordinary things. Subscribe to Origins of Stuff for our next episode. Safety pin. From warrior cloak to diaper essential. Stay curious.